Ms. Taffy. We're ready? Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming for our special joint workshop meeting of the Lake Forest City Council and Lake Forest Housing Authority, May 14th. Welcome and thank you for being here. Sorry for my absence. I tore my rotator cuff in the middle of March, and being the stubborn male that I am, it took me 2 weeks to actually get to the doctor to get diagnosed with what it was. I've had surgery and I've had some complications since then pertaining to medication and a little bit of an infection in my right shoulder. So being non-ambulatory, not able to walk, and the loss of my right arm has really incapacitated me and made me feel a lot more sympathetic for those that have lost the use of both their arms and legs, because I'm a fish out of water. But thank you for your patience, and thanks for being here. Thank you, council members, for carrying on without me, and I'm so sorry, and my deepest apologies. So thank you, and let's get this going. Okay. Tonight's invocation will be led by Councilmember Dwight Robinson.
Thank you. My first time as well doing this. Appreciate the opportunity. So if you'll bow your heads or whatever seems to work for you, I'm going to recite a prayer by Thomas Jefferson from 1801. So. Almighty God, who's given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly ask that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of your favor and glad to do your will. Bless our land with honorable memory, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties, and fashion into one united people the multitude brought together from many places. Endow with your spirit of wisdom those who are entrusted the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to your law we may show forth your praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust to fail. Amen.
And at this time, would you all rise and join me as I lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance to this greatest nation on the face of this earth. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to open up the public comment. All members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person, and at the overall time limited to 30 minutes for the public comment portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether it or not appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door over at the side. Complete your form and submit it to the City Clerk or Deborah Rose up here in the front prior to the individual being requested to come before the City Council. Whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the City Council in writing. 8 copies and only permanent points presented orally. Additionally, a request to register within written comments form is available at the agenda public review counter. At this time, do we have any public comments?
We've had one request. Jim Gardner.
I didn't have to read all the rules for him, did I?
Good evening, council and staff, and welcome back. Tuesday nights are not the same without you, so I'm sure everyone's very pleased that you're back.
I'm happy to be here.
While you were away, Councilman Robinson was kind enough to share with me a Senate bill which apparently passed last year about telecommuting. And with a little bit of tweaking, that bill could have allowed you from your home to have, telecommunicated, to have participated. So I think it might be well worthwhile when you get a chance to talk about getting, like Wagner or somebody, to talk about that little tweak which would let people communicate from home. So I'd like to make that suggestion.
Thank you.
And also, the other day, I was late and I was rushing to get to the Planning Commission, and I didn't have dinner and I hadn't had anything, and I was thinking, oh, when I get here, I'll have a cup of coffee and a cookie. That'll be great. And I forgot the Planning Commission. They're not like you, and you guys don't know this because you don't go there. They're not fancy like you. They get no coffee. They get no cookies. The public got to eat air. It's the same thing with the Parks and Recreation Committee. It's no cookies, nothing. No decaf, nothing. So on behalf of the public, not that there are so many people there, it'd probably take 4 cookies and a pot of coffee to handle the crowd. But I think it would be a nice thing for the public if we could get the coffee and cookies at the Planning Commission and at the Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you very much.
Any further comments?
We've had no further requests.
Well, at this time, we would open it up to the agenda, a joint workshop in the 5-year public plan. Item number 1, please.
Agenda Item 1, 5-year strategic plan review, submitted by City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This item actually is a continuation of the conversation that started some time ago, in which the Council held a joint workshop with the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And that workshop was instructive, I think, in providing a general forum for potential programs and projects for an initial draft of the 2013-2018 strategic plan. It's still development, as the Council is aware. What we've traditionally done in this process is to bring back to the Council a listing of those topics that were raised during the meeting, and get further direction from the Council as it relates to those items as to whether or not the Council as a whole desires for those items to be included, at least initially, into your draft 5-year plan, and whether or not those that are already there should remain or change. And with respect to that, it's always been the city's process, as you know, it's a 5-year plan, and we redo it every 2 years. But you always have the ability to completely change the entire document, or simply take the remaining 3 years and move them up, add 2 more years to the end. The options are really the Council's. But fundamentally, it's always been one in which you've identified programs and projects over a 5-year period, and those have generally advanced. But of course, the Council is not limited in that process. This evening, we identified for you in your staff report those items that the staff was able to take note of during that joint workshop, and we're bringing those back to you this evening. They actually start on page 2 of your agenda report. And just to get through those quickly, there's a number of them. They go on the various things that we talked about: strategic issues, capabilities, and what staff is seeking at this juncture is for the Council to, by consensus or vote, clearly we need a majority of you to tell us that, gee, we'd like that included, or we're not necessarily wanting to include that at this point. The draft document itself will come back to the Council, depending on what transpires tonight. We anticipate that would be the first meeting of June. So you get your first review of the draft document itself, and then the adoption would be scheduled for the second meeting of June. In looking at page 2, there were really only 2 strategic issues that were identified for potential inclusion. And so those really aren't programs or projects, but they would be things that the Council believes are challenging, facing the city over the course of the next 5 years. And the one was consideration of a financial stability addition as a strategic issue, and also an issue related to transit. And I think the particular comment was on connecting east and west portions of the city. So you'd want to give us some feedback relative to those. You can see also on page 2 there were no new capabilities that were discussed at the workshop. And the constraint that was identified had to do with regulatory agencies, the state of California, as being a constraint sometimes on what the city's able to do. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if there is any feedback by the council as it relates to any of those items that you see on page 2, staff will note those and integrate them into the plan or not at this juncture. So I guess I'd be looking to the council as to what your feelings are on those 3 items.
Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for this item?
Excuse me, Jim Rosenberg, followed by Jim Gardner.
Thank you, Mitch. My name is Jim Rosenberg, resident of Lake Forest, member of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I would like to spend a moment or two just addressing one of the items actually on page 3, where we get into the specific programs, the Healthy City Initiative, per se. Just to give a brief overview of what it is, and it's something I've championed in the past. It is a program sponsored by the Center for Civic Partnerships, which in its own right is a partner with the U.S. Public Health Institute. And Healthy Cities is pretty much what it is. In California, there are right now somewhere in the 70 number of cities that are deemed healthy cities. The good part of this program, it's not cost intensive. For one, we're talking about an application fee that's in the hundreds of dollars, and after that, the cost is in the programs, and those are programs that we do ourselves to a great extent anyway. One of the interesting things about this program, and doing some research on it myself, the fact that it's been in existence 23 years in the state of California. The cities, as I've mentioned, typically number in the 70s on a year-to-year basis, and they encompass all kinds of different sizes, demographics, parts of the state, etc. The communities involved in various ways will concentrate on putting forth, as I said before, a number of programs emphasizing health. Lake Forest for years has had the saying attached to it, the good life of Lake Forest, and this park's right up the same alley. No pun on the bark part for the dog park, which is in works also. The other interesting fact about the California Healthy City program, in all the research that I was able to do website based on it, in the last 10 years, there has not been one city in southern Orange County that has qualified or has enrolled or been enrolled in the program. In the last 10 years, the only Orange County city I could find is the city of Irvine. So it's kind of like something under a rock that's a good thing that hopefully we could go forward with in looking at doing unique things for the city to put Lake Forest on the map in a bigger light. I think this would be an initiative that I would urge the council to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Gardner.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Jim Gardner, resident of Lake Forest. I have a general comment about the strategic planning. In your absence, at the last meeting, I made a comment about process, and I sent you a copy of my comments then. This is kind of a continuation of that, and one of the things I would like to see in the strategic plan, actually in almost anything we did in the city, which is almost absent in most of the things we do, are what are normally referred to as KPI, or key performance indicators. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to pick on Neighborhood Watch because I know that's something that's dear to your heart, and I've been involved in that myself. At the end of the day, I don't really care if there's 30 Neighborhood Watches going or 1,500 people or anything like that. What are we concerned about? And this is where you get to KPIs. What we should be looking at is, when we introduce Neighborhood Watch, does it impact the crime rate? Does it impact the crime rate across all crimes? Does it do that across all neighborhoods? Over what period of time does that happen? If it's successful, what are the minimal conditions necessary to maintain the progress that we make? It's that kind of approach. Everything that we're doing, the city's doing about 200 things, and it's very rarely breaking it down into that nitty-gritty and saying, exactly what are we getting out of it, because it costs. It costs us to do Neighborhood Watch or any of the other things you're proposing to do. There's a cost. It doesn't necessarily do a benefit. There may be a harm to doing something. So I'd like to see, as you go forward, obviously it's got nothing to do with what you're going to prove tonight, but going forward, I'd like to see more attention. When the city talks about a program, let's go to KPIs and say, what are we going to get out of it? How are we going to measure it? How are we going to evaluate it? Do we fund it going forward? Thank you very much for your time.
We've had no further requests.
Okay, well, in that case, we'll bring it back to council.
With respect to strategic issues and constraints, you have my support to stick with what we have right here.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Glad you're back. Right here in the very first part where it says transit connection to east and west portion of the city, this is something that I have brought to our attention repeatedly. And if you look back here on page 293, where it's talking about grow in Lake Forest, which is a very excellent strategy for economic development. And I don't know if Jessica, whoever came up with it, but that's very, very, very good. If you look at this joining the east and west while you're soliciting the businesses and the corporates to come together to try and connect, you will, and you look at this and put the two together, if they would, while you're building up the program that you have outlined here, which you did a very good job of it, you will see that while you're at it, if you would fold in on the shopping on both ends, working with each other on both ends and getting some kind of mobility among themselves, like in some of the areas, some cities that we've had conferences in, things, the businesses themselves and corporates, they have some type of little shuttle that get you from one of the spots to. We have the east and we have the west, and getting people back and forth, that taking cars off the road and getting them from one end, one's on here, shopping down here, and vice versa. So I'd like to see it where that's kind of worked into this, because this is an excellent plan, and it would yield even more if there was a way for the two ends of our city to get together. 293, grow in Lake Forest. And if you think about that Grow in Lake Forest plan that we have, it's a plan that would really increase our visibility, destination, and all the different things that a city need to have to stay vibrant. And it's a very creative method to do it. So I feel if we consider holding in the east to west while we're soliciting off the front, I believe that some of the corporates and some of the businesses would step up and say, yes, let's consider that. It may not happen immediately, but I believe when they start working on this, they'll see that's the component that is missing in the Grow Lake Forest, because the Grow Lake Forest is perfect, but then you got to be able to sustain those on each end, and that would help both ends and all that in the middle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I'm just not clear, 'cause, here in the strategic issue, it says transit connection of east-west port. I mean, you're talking about getting into, we run a transit agency, or,
No.
I mean, what, I have no idea what this is. So I understand the grow part, which will be in, item 3, which deals with economic development, but not this reference to transit. I mean, we don't have any buses, we don't run shuttles.
I brought the, do you mind? Because the staff didn't bring that forth. I brought it forth several times on the disconnect, disenfranchise. I'm not looking for us to have here. We got shopping area down on that end, and we got shopping areas up on this end, where it makes those 2 or 3 stops going just circularly doing the shopping time, and they may be willing to do that. Some of the corporates already have buses that sits there until their people get off from work, and they may be willing to do that.
Okay, so it's asking the businesses what they may or may not be able to do.
Yeah, just throwing it out there and let them kick it around and see what they come back to. I believe if you don't ask, you never get. They can only say yes or no, and if they say maybe, that's a delayed yes.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, and I guess we've got that noted.
you.
And, okay. Yes, Councilman Robinson?
Just to be clear, I don't have any policy moves at this point. I just support the fact that transit, east and west portions of the city is an issue that should be strategic, something that we should be looking at, but I don't support anything specific at this point. I don't think you're proposing that.
No, that's not
Yeah,
on the
just
table.
that it's an issue in
That's-
town, something
yeah,
that we should
that's not on
think
the
about,
table.
and-
Just shop it when you're talking, when you give me a little presentation, is that, the businesses, some of the businesses already have little associations and alliances. And, there's something that may be a little disconnected that you can pull from both ends of the cities. If y'all ever thought about doing such and such a thing, just throwing it out there and see what happens. You throw enough spaghetti on the wall, some is going to stick. Let's get real. So I'm just saying, let's throw it out there. That's an opportunity. This is an excellent time for us to throw it out rather than shopping it by itself, because we're not going to do it, but they may be considering doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there might be a variety of options, and I'm open to having the discussion. I think
That's all I'm
the way I
asking.
recall it was at the budget workshop, we talked about the fact that we have the sports park coming in, potentially the civic center in this part of the city, and people in that area might not be able to, get to the sports park
in the
or a
east.
new civic center or what have you. And so exploring what options there might be, but
right.
nothing specific or concrete.
Yeah.
So,
Just
okay.
throw it out there.
Yep.
See what happens.
Well, I actually have, as all you know, I'm quite involved with soccer. I've got a fourth grader that plays AYSO soccer, and we've been exploring club play. In doing so, we've been to State Cup up in Lancaster, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of excitement with the new Lake Forest Sports Park coming here. I think that's really going to put us on the map, but we have some vacant land here in Lake Forest, off of Lake Forest Drive, that some of the soccer dads have kind of got together and sketched out something that is in desperate need of in Orange County that we don't have enough of, and it's arena soccer. And so as a concept, they brought me a drawing. One of the guys is an architect, and they've been driving to Mission Viejo to try to get playing time at Mission Viejo arena soccer field they have at the YMCA. It's one small, it's not even a full-size regulation field, arena, but these guys have put together, I told them about the Whispering Hills property, and they came on their own and actually drew out a sketch on that, and I submitted it to our planning commissioner, and I don't know if you guys, council, am I allowed to ask a question of commissioners that are in the audience?
Sure, if they want to answer them, certainly.
Commissioner Jim, could you please come forward, please, maybe, and have you had time to talk to any, or bring that public comments at your Park and Rec Commission? I would like to see us utilize the land of Whispering Hills along Lake Forest Drive. We're moving forward quickly, and they're working very hard at getting our dog park up and going, and I think that this is something that falls into their commission, but I'd like to see us become maybe a hub and a destination for arena soccer also. It's something that Lake Forest would be put on the map for, because we have the land along Lake Forest Drive. Irvine has got abundance of parks. They have some great parks. They have the great park coming with quite a few soccer fields coming, but they don't have any arena soccer. The only arena soccer fields in Orange County, or South Orange County, is Mission Viejo at the YMCA. Rancho Santa Margarita has a small one, and I think there's one in San Clemente.
In San Juan.
In San Juan.
And to just make a comment on that, it's not even worth driving to. It's an older, it's semi-underfunded in disrepair type of thing. So if it's not appropriate, I'll just make a couple of comments on having seen this at our last Parks and Rec Commission meeting. Under our commissioner comments, I took the liberty of distributing the drawing that is coming up your way to my colleagues. We did not have the time to have any discussion on it. Right now, we're fully immersed in the dog park, bring that to conclusions, after which I'm sure this will be something we can agendize. Just a couple of general comments about this idea. It is something that is a quickly growing concept in the sport, for one. It is something that there is an absence of facility for it, especially in southern Orange County, which has one of the largest soccer playing organizational population, depending on whatever level players are playing at, of anywhere in the United States. There are probably over 30,000 youth, meaning from 6 to 19, playing in the sport, and there are probably a good, excuse me, 5,000 adults that participate in some kind of program. So it's a large number of people. What this also offers the opportunity for is something that we almost don't even talk about here, and that's called adult recreation. Outlet for adult recreation for a number of reasons. You're less apt as an adult to get injured in this versus playing full field soccer. There's a lot of adults out there who, their glory years having been passed, in their mind they still want to go out and be Pelé or whomever, Messi, Ronaldo, and it just doesn't work. And that, again, we look and we keep looking at things with Lake Forest to say, what can we do to make us unique, to put the city on the map as a destination point for southern Orange County. It's something that other people don't have. It is not the most expensive thing to build when you look at recreation facilities. There are grants available through the U.S. Soccer Federation and also possibly through Major League Soccer, which we have avenues that I can provide to explore to see if that is. And the other thing, from a economic development standpoint, the Whispering Hills property is located within walking distance of about 7 acceptable, call them fast food type establishments when people are out doing sporting events and things like that. Again, opportunity to increase their business, which in turn increases revenues that come into the city's coffers. So possibly another win-win situation. But again, something I think that needs a lot more introspection and work from an idea standpoint, a concept standpoint, something to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that, I just got an email from our commissioner of AYSO Region 85 just the other night. They are starting a adult an adult for the coaches, an adult soccer league that are in soccer that will be playing on weeknights at the YMCA Mission Viejo. So I'm actually looking at for consensus to put this on into our 5-year. So
Well, if I might,
yeah.
I'm not sure where the property lines are on this, because my recollection is that that Whispering Hills property doesn't take up that entire part, but we'd have to check that. But number two, there's going to be an issue of prioritization. We currently just won a contract for over $33 million for a sports park. We also have Village Pond Park and the dog park, for which we have to fund yet. And so those are certainly two major issues. And then, of course, there's the community center. And so you're somewhere in here, we all have great ideas, and we could probably come up with all kinds of things that would be neat to have, but we're going to have to set some priorities somewhere, just as we have been, in other areas of capital projects. So, I think you'd have to also decide which ones you don't want to pursue. You want to not do the dog park and do the arena soccer, not do the community center, Village Pond Park. Actually, I think we have to do that one for a variety of
Village
reasons.
Pond is a must.
So, there's going to be a prioritization issue. It is basically what my point is, and that's something that's going to be evaluated. We already have, also a series of new parks coming forward through the OSA projects, one of which we'll probably receive next year through the Shea Toll project. So it's a priority issue. How you want to prioritize it.
Mayor and fellow councilman, for me, I don't have to prioritize. When you speak of the three, out of the three, my vote will be for Village Pond until it is completed to the level that we need it to be. It has become to the point that it's emergency, it needs to be fixed. And yes, I would vote for this, and yes, I'll vote for the dogs, but right now, I'm letting you know ahead of time, my vote will be for Village Pond Park. I go past there regularly, and it's my top priority for right now. My vote's not going on anything else but that. That's
Actually, this is a concept in the fact vacant land still, so I'm just putting it out there for a
can stay
consensus to
vacant.
put it into what we can put down and figure out what the staff can rein it in and see what we actually possibly are cost-wise. Is that correct?
It's not going nowhere.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what staff would do based on your input this evening is take a look at what ultimately ends up in the 5-year plan, but clearly the first 2 years of that 5-year plan is your 2-year CIP. And that's what you're really going to try to build over the course of the next 2 years. One of the things we would maybe talk about here in a little while are all of the projects that are deferred from previous years. And so this concept or any other new concept, it clearly, as Councilmember Herzog's talking about, is in a competition with a lot of things. And so you always want to match your objectives with your resources, and so what you want to do with the money. And so what we would do is, if the council has a desire for this to be explored, we could take the opportunity to look at it, get a rough order of magnitude of costs at some point, and then you could put it into your 5-year plan, and where it falls in the 5-year plan, either as a project that you'd want to do in the first 2 years or the last 3 years. Things in the last 3 years ordinarily are not funded immediately. They're just identified as priorities. But you could place it anywhere that you wanted to, or into a deferred list entirely. There's no, you don't see the horizon when that would occur. So you have all those options if you want us to spend the time. That's really, I think, the question. Spend the time to sort of get a rough order of magnitude of costs and feasibility. We could do that. That's the council's pleasure.
And so basically, I'm looking for consensus to spend a little bit of time to get an idea of where we're going to be at this. In fact, we'll bring it back to, obviously, we have 3 new council members on council that actually, no offense to
Under Cal Green, there's certain things we need to do under the state of California, but the staff does not have any particular program in mind related to this, so unless the council had something you wanted to do. The parking code already is under discussion by the Planning Commission, so that's a program underway already, and one you probably don't need to add. The sign ordinance, you have an item on for next week talking about permits and banners, and so that's already underway. The Healthy Initiative is the only one that is not underway, but was one that was raised earlier by Commissioner Rosenberg. Those capital projects, the Dog Run, Dog Park project is already underway with the Commission. Additional Regency Park is a project already, and it's on our capital projects list, as you see, and Village Pond Park is one that the council has initiated. Improvements to Normandale Park, that's one that is out into the future. Clearly, it's a unimproved park site that the city owns. It is, I think, noteworthy that both Normandale as well as Whispering Hills were irrevocable offers of dedication from the HOAs that owned them prior to the city. So the city now owns them, but they were part of a neighborhood that was developed. Improvements at the terminus of Ridge Route, there are a variety of concepts about that. The staff has one that has been exploring that we'd be pleased to share with the council when the time was right. Conversion to light emitting diodes for streetlights and parks. We've been talking with the OSA developers, and we're looking at the possibility of LED streetlights in some of our new communities. Replacing existing streetlights throughout the city is really expensive. So the good news is, I guess, is we're already doing something about that. Doing something that would replace existing streetlights with LEDs would be fairly aggressive, and there are some companies that are doing debt financing to help cities do that. There is some elements to it that we could explore for you, but rest assured we're doing them as somewhat demonstration projects, particularly in the Shea Baker project on the loop roads, not on the interior. In fact, they're not sure they'd want LED lights in the interior of the neighborhoods that they're going to sell. So they're a little bit skeptical about that, but they are supportive of them being on the arterial. Those were the projects and the programs that were identified, and sort of a quick status of what we're doing. If there's anything else you'd want us to do with those, I guess now would be the time to identify that. Or if there's ones that were not talked about that you want to raise now, this would be the time to do that as well.
Council?
The only thing I'd note, I wouldn't add anything additionally. And, as far as Healthy City, I would not add that at this time. I mean, that would have to be fleshed out a lot more to know anything about it. But I think we should, the Northern Regency Parks, they're right on the opposite sides of the street. I think we should combine that into a single project. That was sort of the intention way back before the sports park came along, and I think we should get back to that. So throughout the documents that we have, they're listed as two. I would combine those and make it a single project, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do one and not the other. And then now with the sports park coming online, now there's even going to be the connection over into the sports park as well. So that'd be my suggestion, is make that a single project. Stop listing it as two.
I would look at the money. You know me, the money.
Well, it's deferred. I can guarantee that. I'm not
yeah.
moving it up. Just
The
as
thing
far as how
is,
it's listed.
I understand that. I hear you. But the thing is for me, I would look at the money, if it's financially feasible, and in reference to whatever is ahead of it, that's what I would be looking at. And as far as the Healthy City, I can't foresee that as a cost factor. The League of California City, through their community service, I used to be on that policy committee, they have been soliciting cities to do healthy cities for many, many years. I've only been aboard for about 19, and they were doing it before then. And when I was on the board, that was a push, and a lot of cities on the northern end and outside of our county does have the Healthy City Initiative. It's not a lot of cost factor in that. It's very nominal. Rather than just toss it completely off, really, you can just get a analysis from the league and see what's the average cost to start up on that. In fact, some of the groups around take those and run with them and do them throughout different cities. So I don't have an idea of the cost factor off the top of my head. Oh, I forget stuff. But before I would just toss the Healthy City out, I would like to get a little feedback from any of my colleagues that has more information on it. But I do know it's widespread outside of our county. He wants to say something.
With respect to the two items in the programs that appear like we're not currently doing them, one was the private nations partnerships. From my opinion, we're kind of looking at that right now with respect to the RFP process for lobbying and looking for grants and so forth. So I think we're covering that, so I don't have a problem with that. With respect to the Healthy City Initiative, my suggestion, especially since it was brought up by one of our Park and Rec commissioners, is that maybe the Park and Rec Commission actually takes a look at this themselves, and they can explore it, look at different costs, and then bring it back to us. If there's a significant cost, then it would be difficult to try to put it into the budget. If it's a minor cost, like Mayor Pro Tem McCullough is suggesting, then it might be something that's pretty easily implemented. So that would be my suggestion at this point.
So just a point of clarification. So you're supporting Ms. Kathy McCullough to leave it on and just get the cost
I'll
and
let
to
them
leave it
look
on?
at it. Yeah, I can agree with that.
He's deferring it to Parks.
I'm suggesting move it to
She's
Park
right.
and Recs
I agree.
and let them deal with it. And there's nothing that would preclude them from doing that at any point in any meeting. So, then with respect to Councilman Herzog's suggestion about combining projects, I'm supportive of that. It is deferred at this point. If we decided to try to break it up in the future for some reason because it seemed like it was just too big of a dollar amount, we could always do that in the future as well. But for right now, I say, let's put it together, and it does make sense that you'd be trying to do that at the same time. But
It'd be less money if you do it all at once.
based on the cost, it's going to be
Yeah.
pretty difficult to. So.
Well, on that subject, the Healthy City Initiative, I'm always looking for things to allow Lake Forest to stand out. That's why when the AYSO dads brought the idea of the arena soccer, and there's not being arena soccer in South Orange County, I thought it would be something to bring forth to all of us. I think it's something I thought it would be more exciting. So the Healthiest City initiative, I kind of think that with Irvine being one of the only cities in Orange County doing it, I don't have a problem leaving it on or deferring it to council, and it will get consensus on that. I think the consensus already is to pass it to the Park and Recs, but I think that's a great initiative for us to talk about, because obviously there's a big emphasis on the kind of foods the kids are eating at school, and as we all become older and more prone to injuries, as I'm finding out, I think it's important for us to maybe as a city talk about that a little bit more. In combining the two projects of Normandale and Regency, I think that's a bad move, because we got Regency Park that already has playing fields. All we're talking about is adding a bathroom, which we already have designs with, because we did 2 new bathrooms in Tamarisk Park, and what was the other park we did last year? Which one?
Rimgate.
Rimgate. So we'd be using the same model, and I think there's already emphasis on that, and Normandale. Why have the Regency Park hold up and wait until the Normandale Park, which obviously even our council member says is going to be deferred? I think that bathroom at Regency Park may be one moved up, and I think that because of the cost, I think it's good to separate that and maybe move forward with just a small addition of the restrooms if need be, but the fact is that not tie it up with Regency or the Normandale, because I think that's going to be deferred who knows how long with the stuff that we have coming down. So I think tying those 2 parks up, one totally undeveloped, the other one kids are playing on now, and we're dropping off restrooms for the weekend play. I think that that the Regency Park needs a bathroom, and I think that might be something might expedite as consensus shows or the vote comes up. But the fact is we already have the design for the bathrooms, and I think it's a need right now. And the park the park, the undeveloped land at Normandale is totally undeveloped. So I think it's a danger of tying those 2 together when you already have kids playing at Regency. So I don't like the idea of tying those 2 together. So that's my
For money.
We'll separate and bring it forth the money.
It might be helpful to bring forward some of the things we had discussed before about the advantages of tying them together. Particularly then there's the third piece of land that provides parking potentially. And, particularly if you're talking about a really hard piece of infrastructure, then when you do come around to being it, because even that part is not something that's currently in the immediate list, then you might be having to take out a very significant piece of infrastructure. So, you need to also look long-term, as well as just not, something for, this immediate section. So I think it might be helpful to provide some of the background information, because that's where we were moving it forward on, was to move that forward. Then the sports park fortunately came together, and that's why it was deferred. And so actually even the Regency Park aspect of stuff would continue to be deferred in light of the other items. So it might be good to get that additional background for it. It'd be my suggestion, because there actually was very good reason to discuss the 2 at the same time, because we were able to put together something that was far more impactful and useful for the community by looking at them together as opposed to separate. So historically, there was a very solid reason for doing that.
If we remove the restrooms and separate the restrooms out of that and left the restrooms as a Regency Park possible separate item, then I have no problem. Otherwise, I think that, of course, I don't have all the evidence in front of me, so
That's why I suggested it might be good to do.
and so to keep it separate for now and bring it back, and we'll combine it later. Could we do that?
The council could put them together, take them apart anytime I guess you wanted to do that. Right now, they are separate projects, and Councilmember Herzog's time they were being considered to be combined. And that was, as he articulated some time ago, we were in search of a sports park that seemed to be the best place. But we found something else, another place to do that. And so those projects clearly have moved to a deferred list. The Regency Park though, has some funding that's been in the CIP related to bond money that we're needing to chase from the previous developer of that, the Wheeling Lion Company. And there is another piece of land in that general area that was alluded to that was being conceptualized at that point. If the council has a desire to put them together, we could do that, bring it back as part of your 5-year plan. If you want to keep a component out and mix and match it, I guess we could do that. What I would suggest perhaps is that let me go back, and we'll go back into our files, dig out the stuff, and maybe send that to you, and then you can have a conversation in maybe 3 weeks or so when we come back to that first meeting in June, and you can probably make a better decision about what makes sense to you then.
Okay. So at this time, we'll keep it separate until we get the information. Correct. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to just give a little extra. For the staff, when you're doing that and bringing it back, is it possible for you to make sure you could note what the effect would be if you kept the project together and just allowed the bathroom to go for it, the restroom to go for it in Regency, and if you took and put the two together and just kept on for it and did it, whichever way? I'd like to have all three scenarios on that. Thank you.
One other thing from me, if I don't know exactly how you glean this information, but if there's any idea of how much Regency Park's going to actually be used for soccer after the sports park goes in, and is it going to have the same usage that it's had over the last few years? I think for me that's going to be key information to make any sort of educated decision here. So.
Yes.
I think that's a good point, Councilman Robinson. My offhand comment about those types of issues, that there's an insatiable appetite for field space by youth sports programs. But that being said, yeah, we really don't know until the sports park is up and operating what impact that will have on some of our facilities like Regency. So that's a point we'll.
So does that conclude? Do we have consensus on moving forward? We don't need a vote. We just need consensus.
No, I believe we got some ideas of what we were doing. What I would point out to the council is that there was a list of projects and programs already in the 2011-2016 5-year plan, and of course we're now going to be building 2013 to 18 plan. And you can see on page 4 and 5, we give you a listing of where those projects are. Fundamentally, they're all underway. So if there was one that the council felt needed to be changed in some fashion, you want to identify that for us now. The programs and projects that were deferred is showing on page 4. If there are any of those projects, and some of them have a pretty high price tag, and of course you're going to have to look at priorities. There's only so much money by which to do any of these things. If any of these that are in deferred are ones that you want to try and look to pull forward, then you'd want to identify those for us now as well. Our intent would be to take the things that you identify this evening that are in these documents, as well as in what is now currently a draft 2-year CIP, and then try to put some cost to it, bring it back to you at a future meeting so you could have that conversation about prioritization, because you'll want to match money to projects.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, on the table 1, we have Geronimo Streetscape Project Phase 2 and Geronimo Streetscape Phase 3. I think the community came out and pretty strongly about, was it the Phase 3 between Lake Forest, Phase 2 between Lake Forest and Geronimo, talking about the danger to the children and stuff.
Well, primarily those 2 phases of the project dealt, I think, with the closure of some left turn lanes in and out of adjoining neighborhoods. So it was really the left turn issues that were more driving some of those conversations. But clearly, those 2 phases of this Geronimo project did not have community support, and consequently the council deferred them. They're unfunded. They're out there. At some point, if you wanted to bring them forward, you could. But at this juncture, there's really not been a support for those future projects of the Geronimo project. And consequently, the decision back was to take the dollars that were available for that and move it to different projects in the community, and that's what occurred.
Thank you.
The only one I would mention is the Portola Gap closure. Obviously, that's not going to happen in the next 2 years. Don't worry. But I think there is something that does need to be done. I've been following this one for a long time and working with the county and various others, because this actually is a project that's actually, I guess it's now, I'm not sure if that's in the county or the city of Irvine, but anyway, it's between our border and then over to the 241 corridor where Portola stops in there. And the county is obviously going to have to be a participant in that, and their line for not moving forward on it with all is because they weren't sure about the traffic generation. They need a sufficient indication of trips to bring that forward. Now, that discussion all occurred prior to the OSA. And additionally, that all occurred before things were really known about what was going to go on with the housing at the Great Park, or whatever you want to call it, that possibly could double from the 5 to 10,000 units. So I think, if we want to move that forward, I think it would be beneficial to look into just the trip generation aspect. I know we have traffic engineers, and just get that information, because if we can show enough trips for that stretch, then the county will move forward on it. And so then we can begin to fill in that last gap that our residents have asked for. We filled in all the other gaps. And so now it's just working on, the system inside. But that one last gap between Foothill Ranch and the 241 corridor is one that people are still looking for. But again, the county's made it very clear that until they're claiming there are not enough trips to justify putting the money into the project, I think that might be different now. And so what my request would be is that we do look into doing the traffic engineering aspect, just looking at what is the trip generation now with the current land uses that are now coming forward, to see if maybe now we have sufficient trip generation to actually move that along. Not that it's going to happen in 2 years, but that we can start getting going. Unfortunately, road projects take an average of 10 years to bring to fruition, particularly when they're going through land such as this land. So it's the sooner we get going, the sooner we can get it done, because it's not going to happen fast.
Yeah. I can support that because it does take quite a bit of time, and the thing is if that's not completed before or around the same time as the Great Park, our people are going to be gridlocked in and going to have some serious problems. So we need to get see what we can do about getting that done. So I support it. That too. Anyone else?
I will support that for the fact that I think that we're our best advocates, and it's going to benefit us probably more so than anybody else as that Great Park gets built up and the future traffic along the 5 and the 405 continues to pile up. I think that that's an alternate route into Lake Forest for us. So,
While we're on the topic, I appreciate what Councilman Herzog brought forth here, and I support that as well. In the not-too-distant future, we're going to have a new county supervisor, and I doubt it's going to be one of us. I think we have a pretty good idea of who it's going to be.
Never.
But I would urge all my colleagues to make it very clear to our new supervisor, whoever that might be, that this is an issue that's extremely important to a significant portion of that person's district, and that we want to see that pushed forward. So just while we're on the topic, just want to make sure I made that clear.
very good point. Thank you. Anything further? Do you need anything more from us?
Mr. members of the council, based on, I think, the feedback that we've received, the existing programs and projects would remain. We'll make the notations as were identified here in your conversation. Those get worked into a draft. We'll bring it back to you in the first meeting of June. So with that, I think we're done with this item, and we'd be moving on to the next one for this evening.
One more thing.
one more thing on behalf of Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just, my eyes fell up on the ADA, and I didn't get a chance to ask this. On our ADA ramp improvement projects, is that completed, or where does it stand? I know that some of that we had to fast forward because of the new rule that came out, and some things had to be changed. So where are we as far as off or on mark with that?
That's a great question. It seems to be an annual project funded by our development block grant monies. So our approach to this is to do as many as we can with the dollars that are allocated through CDBG on a regular basis. There's a project in the draft budget for that very purpose. I'm not exactly sure. I have to defer to Mr. Wheeler if he off the top of his head knows. I think we're going to like phase 7, and honestly, I'm not really sure how many phases there may be. We're higher than that. Good. But what happened to us on the way of this project in long term is the federal government changed ADA requirements, and so it's almost where you got to go back in and tear out things that you'd already put in. We're trying to address those that really are super deficient versus, okay, we did it a few years ago and now it needs to be changed again. But Mr. Wheeler, anything to add relative to that item? Okay. Yeah, we're working on it. It's funded, but through CDBG.
Yeah, I know that it's funded through the block grant program, and that was one of the things that gave me concern, because I know that we can only do as much, and the block grant program got some dollars cut out of it. And so will we still be able to continue to do it that way? Because as far as the deferred list, I know that's standing still. But with the block grant money being cut, are we going to still be able to do the amount that we had anticipated doing? Because we had to pull all that stuff out and redo for the feds, and now with the funds being cut, then that's one of the things I was concerned about.
I think we certainly would be able to fund as much as we possibly can. There's limitations. We spend the CDBG dollars, as you know, for the some of the programs that are out there. The projects really take more of a priority, and consequently, what I'm hearing, I think what the staff's intent would be, is to put the priority for those dollars into the wheelchair ramps, the ADA access. And so I guess I would say I would be optimistic, as long as the federal government doesn't cut it entirely out, that we'll be able to continue to make progress on those projects.
Yes, unfortunately, when they change and have you to pull everything out and put in new, they don't give you a pot of money for it. It's just a mandate that you got to do it without money. And citizens need to remember, when they give us that, we didn't just go in there and decide to pull all that stuff out that we had put in. But when they do that, they do not give us more money. In fact, the block grant money's been cut across the board, every state. And there is no additional money for us to correct what they choose to have corrected by saying, we need you to now do it this way. And that's something to take away from other projects that we would do. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 2, fiscal year 2013-14 budget workshop, submitted by the Director of Finance, City Treasurer.
At this time, do we have any public comments?
We did receive a request to speak from Gardner.
Jim's coming.
Are you deferring?
Yeah, I'd never like to speak more than 3 times.
Okay, we're going to remember that and have them speak
Okay.
3 times in a row.
We'll take that duly noted.
You can try 2.
So,
Well, Mr. Members, Council, if there are no public comments, then we'll get going on this. I have a very brief introduction, but I'm going to actually defer to Mr. Neves here shortly, because he's worked really hard on his slide presentation, and I know he'd be seriously disappointed if he didn't get the opportunity to provide it to you. But just as a preface, this budget's been developed based on certainly the 2012-13 budget. We looked at the 2011-13 capital improvement project budget, the 5-year strategic plan, the workshop, the mid-year budget review. There's a lot of sources, data points from which the staff takes information and then looks at the budget and produces it internally to present to you for your consideration. I won't steal any of his thunder, but our intent is to go through. I'm not going to do it. So you hold on. You gave me that look like, yeah, okay, sure. You want to go through clearly the city's budget, but also the housing authority, because you are jointly meeting, and there's an interesting way to that. I'll let him talk about it. And clearly, the 2-year CIP, our process this evening, as we see them, is for Keith to go first. Then there is an exhibit to this item that we provided that identified 4 items that the council had provided us as direction over the course of the last year that you wanted to talk about concurrent with your budget workshop. So they're here for you this evening for that conversation, and I'll be doing that portion of it with you. Then our recommendation is that, as you have in the past years, and there may be any other ways by which to do this, but traditionally you've gone and asked for questions and any comments related to each individual department budget, and any feedback that we get as it relates to that. If there's none, that's fine. If there are, we'll take copious notes related to that, and then bring you back a draft budget. And of course, we'll do that for all 3 of the budgets that you have for this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith to do this slide presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Presented before you tonight in agenda item number 2 is the proposed fiscal year 2013-2014 City and Housing Authority operating budgets and the 2013 to 2015 capital improvement projects budget. We'll be going through about 25 slides, walking through each budget, revenues and expenditures, and we will answer any questions at the end. So as we go with the slide, we're going to start with a little review of 2012, 2013, some highlights, what's going on right now. The city is in solid financial condition. Our 40% reserves are fully funded. Revenues are exceeding expenditures in most categories, and we should come out with a surplus at the end of 2012-2013. We've received top marks in the biannual resident and business survey. 95% of the residents and 92% of the businesses are satisfied with the way the city is moving forward. Also, we have almost $7 million worth of streetscape projects were finished in 12-13. That was El Toro, Geronimo, Tribuco, and Rockville Boulevard. Public Works is finalizing the grading of the 86-acre sports park right now. As you know, you signed a contract about a month ago. We will start construction on that sports park. That will take approximately 12 to 14 months, so it will go through fiscal year 13-14 and into 14-15. And then we are continuing with the dissolution of the redevelopment agency, the Lake Forest Redevelopment Agency, and the liquidation of assets and securitize of the remaining debt that will be paid from remaining tax increment. And then the second Shop and Dine was attended by over 1,000 community members this year in 12-13. The city also finalized the agreement regarding the expansion of the Music Jail. And just a tip of the hat, the Guinness Book of World Records for largest skateboard lesson was at our skate park this year. So that's now in the Guinness Book of World Records. Moving forward to fiscal year 13-14, the city will continue to maintain its strong financial position with a balanced budget, with a strong surplus. General fund revenues are projected to exceed general fund expenditures by roughly $1 million. So we will be putting away another roughly $1 million into fund balance going into 13-14 on the projections. We will continue construction of the sports park and the civic center, and the recreation center. Like I said, that's a 12 to 14 month process. We will continue the advanced planning for the civic center. and continue with that process. And then we will also improve traffic flow and circulation throughout the city in some of the new CIP projects in the 13 through 15 CIP projects budget. This is kind of your balance sheet of the city, all funds budgeted for 13-14. Beginning balances, you have roughly $61 million in beginning balances. Revenues coming in this year look to be around $65.8 million. And the expenses are broken down into two categories, operating and capital. Operating looks like to be about $39 million in all funds, and capital is $35.7 million. And of that $35.7 million, $33 is for the sports park. So that is your biggest project this year, and probably your biggest expense that's happened ever in this city. Looking at revenues less expenditures, you're gonna use about $8.8 million in fund balance. That is CIP related, because your general fund does have a positive fund balance. So that's just using funds that you've built up over time to complete CIP projects. Ending balance looks like about $52.3 million. This might be a little small on the slide. I didn't know it's going to come out this small, but this is just a summary of revenues of all funds and percentages of where they're at. I'll kind of walk through them since you might not be able to see them really clear up there. Other revenues, about 1%. Your property taxes bring in 25%. Licenses and permits, 2%. Sales tax, around 24%. User fees and charges, around 3%. Other taxes, 10%. And then from other governments is around 33%. What I can do is I can shoot everybody a copy of the slide on this so you can see it clearly if you can't see it up there.
It's in our budget.
It should be one of the slides in the budget. Here's the next slide, is the summary of operating expenditures by category. Of course, we're a contract city, so your biggest slice of the pie is contractual services at 58%, personnel at 20%, maintenance and operations around 20%, and then this is excluding capital, so capital outlay just in the operating side budget is 0.4%, and then all other is 2%. We'll get to the general fund, show you the kind of the balance sheet of the general fund. We'll split that out. This is your operating account of the city. This is where all your revenue and expenditures go to operate the main objective of the city. Beginning balances in the general fund are $19.8 million. Revenues coming in this year are $35.9. Expenditures going out look to be about $34.9. That gives you the $1 million surplus in your general fund that you'll be put aside for future expenditures. And then you have some transfers. The net transfer out is about $300,000. That is $277,000 being transferred in from your reserve funds because revenues are a little lower because last year you had about $1.2 million in one-time revenue. And then the other transfer out is about $521,000. The city has a policy that looks back 2 years for your CIP fund and takes the extra of revenues over expenditures and pushes it into the CIP fund. So in 10-11, that was suspended because there was a big transfer to the sports park to start that project. And then 11-12 was the $521,000 positive balance at the end of the year. So we're shifting that into the CIP fund. Next slide is your reserves. Your reserves are fully funded. Currently, you have about $18.6 million in there. Of course, we'll transfer out the $300,000 that goes back to the general fund balance, and you're going to end up with about $18.3 million in reserves. Those reserves consist of a general undesignated economic contingency of about $4.8 million and an emergency services of about $3 million. So you have almost $18.3 million at the end of fiscal year 13-14 setting in reserves for any emergencies. Here's your four biggest general fund revenue sources. Overall revenue in the general fund, like I've said, is $35.9 million. These four revenue sources make up $31.4 million of that $35.9 million. Property taxes, they look to be up about 1.5% this year. Sales taxes, growth of about 2.5%. Hotel taxes are really shooting up this year, almost 8% increase in hotel taxes. And then the fourth one, investment income is actually going down. The Federal Reserve is continuing to hold their rates very low until the Federal Reserve changes their policy. The city is not going to make much money on their LAIF investments or their bond investments because those are probably at historically low numbers right now still, and they don't see a change until maybe 2015. Some of your general fund expenditures, roughly $34.9 million, operating $34.7, and then just a small amount, about $200,000 for capital. Most capital is either furniture, chairs, or IT replacements in the general fund budget. Very little capital. And then this slide shows you the general fund expenditures by department. Of course, police services is the largest at 38%, followed behind by public works at 21%. City council is very little, 1% of the $35 million budget. City manager, 2%. Community preservation, 6%. City attorney, just over 3%, maybe 4%, and then finance, 3%. Development services, 6%, and management services is at 12%. The biggest change we made this year, only one department, really. The skate park used to have its own fund, and we'd make transfers out each year to fund the skate park. Now we have pushed the skate park back into the general fund under the community services department and made another division. So now Gary's budget has a recreation division and a skate park division, so we won't need to transfer those monies out anymore. The revenue alongside that also came back into the general fund, so now everything is positioned in the general fund, so we don't need to transfer out each year. That's it for the general fund and the city operating budgets. Now we'll go over the Housing Authority budget. Relatively small. It's about a $75,000 budget. That $75,000 consists of rent coming in from the fourplex the city owns. And then, of course, expenditures. The expenditures are the utilities, the landscaping, the maintenance on the fourplex. So really, it's almost a zero budget each year going in and out. But that's the Housing Authority budget. And then, of course, the capital improvement projects. This is only a proposed capital improvement projects budget for our not fiscal year, but 2013 to 2015. Total expenditures in this is $49.8 million. Of course, the biggest expenditure is the sports park. That's almost $43 million of the $49 million. The $36 million contracts, plus the other contracts that go alongside of it to build the sports park. In 2013, 2014, you look at $35.7 million, and 2014, 2015, you're looking at about $14.1 million. I kind of broke it down by about 4 categories. Won't go through each and every project. But streets, you're looking almost to spend about $3.6 million. ADA projects, sign panel replacements, Portola Parkway streetscapes, sidewalk repairs, street resurfacing and slurry seal per our 7-year pavement management program. Just your basic maintenance, really projects that go on each and every year throughout Public Works. Streets continued, some street resurfacing on El Toro Road between I-5 and Bridger. We're partnering up with the City of Laguna Hills for that. And then, of course, the Teach Street storm drain improvements. we're continuing with the design and construction of that. Traffic improvements. Traffic improvements, you're looking at about $2 million, and these figures are for both years, 13 through 15. Various traffic improvements going on in the city. Traffic signal coordination, he's doing a master plan, some lift-em improvements with the fees we're getting from developers, and of course the Saddleback Ranch Road Street enhancement. They're still looking at design and construction on that up in Portola Hills. Some parks and recreation, of course. This is the biggest number of the CIP. It's a Lake Forest Sports Park and Recreation Center. Some park ADA and transitional access repairs on some of the parks for ADA access. Park light replacement poles, and then of course we have some placeholders for Village Pond Park and Dog Park. Both are just as a placeholder, and they're currently, both of them are unfunded. And then just some environmental improvements, roughly $255,000 worth of about 4 projects that deal with environmental issues throughout the city. With that said, we can have any feedback and discussions. I can turn it back over to the city manager. We can go over the other 4 or 5 topics he has, and then we can come back and start going through the budget.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I guess at this juncture, if you had any questions about Keith's presentation, that's what you'd want to do those now, but otherwise, our proposal is to go through each of the departments, so if you're looking for questions related to their budgets, it would be more appropriate then. My suggestion at the onset here was for the council to give us any feedback, direction relative to the 4 items that you had wanted, because they're not in the budget at this juncture. So we would integrate them into the budget figures for you with another iteration of that document. On that exhibit, perhaps looking at page 285 of your document, it shows the fiscal impact, but it identifies the 4 projects that you had talked about previously. So let me give you just a little bit of background. The seasonal lighting is a project that we have done for 2 years, 2 seasons already. The first year we identified that for you in the report, and last year was a bit more robust. Staff's recommendation last year was that we would do an enhanced program, but look into fiscal year 13-14 to develop a more formal RFP for that process and better identify exactly what we'd want based on our previous experience. So the staff has been working on an RFP that we would intend to bring to you actually at your meeting next week. But as you can imagine, if we're going to go out to RFP pursuant to council's previous direction, we need to get through that process so they can actually put seasonal lights up in time for the season. So we need to get going. That RFP at this current point is structured to give the council options to sort of pick and choose, and if you want to do the whole thing, you'll see what that dollar number is. If you want to exclude certain elements of a lighting program, then because of cost or other reasons, then you could do that. So it's going to be a pretty interchangeable RFP, so that we can see if we look at last year and use that as our benchmark, we would anticipate that to be about $20,000 as we've identified for you on page 285. And there's some pictures that we did provide that kind of give you an idea if you don't remember what we were doing. One of the options that we would actually look at this year is to light absolutely every tree in the median. If you wanted to do that, it would probably drive it above that $20,000 number potentially. But you could exclude those issues or anything else that you wanted to do. One of the questions that had been talked about previously was whether or not the council had a desire to leave the lights on the arbor structure up year-round. So that's one of the things we're looking at in this RFP. You could do it, you could not do it. That is one of the items that you had identified for separate conversation. Another one was more recently brought up. It was on the planting of vines on some of our walls to eliminate some of the graffiti problem. Our recommendation, given just the timing to do this, is more of a demonstration project at this point. And there's clearly some potential. We're not entirely certain, but it seems like it makes sense to get going, doing something, and then try to integrate a much more aggressive program after we see what the results of what we're doing. And right now, the staff has identified $5,000 is probably what it would cost to get a demonstration project going. But clearly, that's a subject of direction by council. One of the programs that you asked us to look at, and this goes back to late last year, was on child safety programs. And we have worked, based on your previous direction, with various groups, very particularly the Aaron Runyon's group, to look at what options and possibilities exist to enhance child safety. We've identified some options for you. Clearly, one of them is to simply cost neutral. It's enhanced marketing of what we already are doing, and we've identified some of those things for you in the report. Ms. Runyon has a program that she is developing called Be Brave, Be Safe. She's trying to get that through the Saddleback Unified School District, but it requires some approval through their curriculum process, and so it's going to take some time. And the thought there behind those dollars was in order to provide the training that would reach out into each of the schools, elementary schools in the city. That I think unfortunately probably doesn't happen this year because of just the process with the school district, but it's something you could identify for any future need. The third option we looked at is a child safety academy. Now, we already do a citizens academy and a emergency preparedness academy, so the staff conceptualized a child safety academy, about $3,500 per offering. We've identified that for you. We think that one has some real viability. The fourth option is a separate program entirely that is fairly expensive, that we did identify a group out there who could do it. If the council had interest, it could be offered several times, but through our recreation program as a fee-based program if you were interested in doing that. So that's a program that goes back sometime from last year. The last one that was identified is a wayfinding signage program, and we've identified that to be cost neutral. As we indicated, we were coincidentally approached by BIA and some of our OSA developers about creating a wayfinding sign program. And the mayor had also identified this as a need for the new neighborhoods that are coming into Lake Forest. We have met with BIA and others and look to have a program that would I think be beneficial to obviously the new communities within the city, but also identifying ways to find existing facilities throughout the city, like the skate park or the new sports park. We've identified that to be cost neutral because the BIA would fundamentally pay for the whole thing, including its maintenance, but the city would be owning the signs. And we are working on a contract that we can bring back to the council to have that done in sufficient time by which to catch the next wave of development that will fundamentally be the Shea Baker project. So those were the four items, Mr. Mayor, that you had as a group directed us to bring back for you. So we'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have about those, but we would look forward to your direction as it relates to all four.
Yeah, on the landscaping one, which actually was sort of aesthetics, and maybe I didn't make myself clear because somebody went way over the top. The only thing I was raising was on city-owned walls and putting vines on the walls, not adding plants in front of walls or anything like that at all. So basically, all of page 282 you can do away with. That was not the intent at all. And basically, the way it came up is if you go down El Toro Road, particularly the new wall we built there between Muralins and that, well, then when the commercial area starts, we built that big wall and put vines on the walls, and there was 2 cuts there that apparently didn't take. You just need to put some vines in it. And then the idea is to get an inventory of where the city walls are, because we have a lot of private walls. And basically then, again, I mean, you can go down to Green Thumb and buy a couple buckets of vines, and you put them there and let them grow up attached to the wall, and really it's more of an aesthetic issue. The side benefit is a graffiti issue. But if you look around the city, you'll see walls with vines partially on and partially not, and it seems to me the vine part looks far better, softens the wall, makes the area far more appealing, and I, quite frankly, don't think it'll be much of an expense. So what I'd like is to just kind of have it retool a little bit, where it's solely looking at the vine planting, not doing any concrete cutting or anything like that. Like I said, if there are cuts like there are along El Toro Road already, we can use those. And there's a couple others farther up El Toro Road, too, where the same thing has happened. And that was really it. So whoever did the work, that's great, but got like way too carried away. The idea of planting plants in front of walls was never the concept, and not any idea. And obviously, from a safety standpoint, and we have vines all over the walls. I don't think we've had any problems on the the vandalism part and other things that were raised in the report. So that was it. And I don't know. That might even only take $5,000 for all I know, but. Is to get an inventory of how much wall space you need and how many vines you need to buy. That's really it. So if I wasn't clear enough, sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Members of the Council, I think we have been doing it because clearly there are city-owned walls and ones that are not.
Yeah.
So we've been going through that process already.
Yeah, and I remember the process of trying to do things on walls we don't own, and I'm not even raising that at this time. That's for another day, because that's always such an entertaining process to go through. So I'm sticking to city walls at this point.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of things. First of all, before I get into my heavy things, I'd like to just ask one thing back here on the Saddleback Ranch Road. Pardon me? Yes, on the capital improvement. That butts up to the Baldwin's property there. Are they going to contribute any monies in there? Thank you. I know I stay on that. On the child safety, here you have on here about this one project that you were talking about, the new project. The thing that I didn't quite get on that was that it seems to be totally targeting the children, and you said that could be folded in and stuff. But one of the things I'd like to know, if that project have a component of teaching where the parents are going to be alerted on how to recognize the signs of a problem. Because, we target children a lot, but a lot of times parents don't even know what to look for if there's a problem and how to address that. Does that program have that component folded in?
I'll defer to Deborah and to the lieutenant, but I believe the short answer is yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted on that one. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is the resource officers. As you know, I had contacted all of our different schools concerning the bully thing, and the Saddleback Valley School District took it over, and they're going around to all the schools now. But in my process, one of the things that I received from several different individuals is there's a resource officer that is shared by El Toro High and Serrano. Is it possible for them, I've been asked repeatedly, is it possible for El Toro High to have their own resource officer? I know you put that new program in place that everybody likes that too, but the resource officer has a lot of stuff to do over there at El Toro as well as Serrano, and I know they're sharing well, but they wanted to know if there was any way we could squeeze out another resource officer so El Toro would have their own.
Mr. Members of the Council, then I guess that would be adding another deputy to the contract, and that would probably be in excess of $250,000 if that has interest for you.
Okay, I'll just let them know.
Okay.
When I tell them I'm going to check on something, I check so I can get back. The other thing is the anti-graffiti. I had already given a compliment to you getting back to us on that so rapidly, and this is the perfect time. I have a little bit more than my colleague, Councilmember Herzog. I automatically like the planting on the walls. If you were around and you know that some of the projects we did when we were still a county, we have planting on the wall, and the ones that doesn't, we had the paint that you can hose off instead you have to paint off. But if there is room and there is enough area to put some planting down, would you have any objections to that? Put a little planting, because planting does soften things. I remember when I was volunteering for the county and I was over their whole redevelopment for the whole county. I went up on a tour up in Sacramento, and their redevelopment gave me a tour. And the lady says, I need you to stand right here. I will forget, Mrs. Montgomery. And I said, okay. She said, no, move over a little bit. And I moved over. And she said, think of the area, just look out. I said, it's beautiful, all the greenery out of green, it's so gorgeous. She said, where are you standing? We have at least one murder there, or somebody jump out the windows up there every 2 or 3 months. She said, this is a very dangerous area, but the planting has helped soften it, and most people don't realize it. And we now have extra officers going through keeping it safer. But they started with the planting. It really softens the area. So the planting will do the two things, soften and graffiti. But if you have a little bit of something you can put there that's low maintenance, I would like to see that there too. Not dig or cut concrete. I agree with you on that. I hate it when the federal will have us to dig up something and redo it. But if there's enough room to put something low maintenance, that water tolerance and stuff, I wouldn't have a problem if you could find some of those left over from a project or got a good sale and threw them in there. Would you object to that?
I mean, if there's some extra.
Yeah,
but I mean,
something
really,
extra. I'm not saying go
really
out
what
and
my
buy.
thought is we're
Yeah.
systematically going
Yeah.
through the city and redoing the landscaping on
Yeah.
the streetscapes, and have done some already. So really, I was kind of viewing it, if there was going to be any actual planting like that,
Yeah.
that would be tied in when we go through the streetscape circuit, if you will, that we're doing through the entire city. So I wasn't really getting into that now.
Now, see, I
Save
was a
that
little-
so it's all
yeah.
tied in.
Well, see, I was a little reversed on that,
Correct, so.
Peter, because I was thinking since you're there put the planning in there for the wall, then you might as well throw that on in there, and you don't have to put that on the list. You can just
Well,
waste that
having
off.
planted a few vines, you dig a little hole about this big,
Yeah, I know.
and it's in. As opposed to...
Yeah, then you must go like this. You got to do a little bit more than that, Peter. Okay, that's the end of my. Oh no, my one important one, the arbor. I would like to see arbor, both of those arbors with lights 24/7. I know in the daytime you can get the ones that in the daytime the sun stores it up so you can keep it on at night. Because we have a little problem. Our sheriff our chief can attest to that there are some homeless that wants to occupy it, and they feel that it's public property and they want to take ownership to it. If the lights are on at night, that would deter a lot of that, and it also looks good. And maybe we can get some lights that by their solar can be ran by solar to save us on electricity. But if not, I think it would be excellent if we consider 24/7 on the lights in the arbors themselves. I'm not talking about all the rest of the things around there. That's y'all's option, but that's something that I feel that we need to look into, and that would solve two problems: beautification and solve the problem of occupying. That's all.
So are you looking for consensus for that?
Yes, I am.
I actually think that the arbor and the bus stops actually look really very nice. I too would like to see those maybe year round, and just for the holidays, just maybe do the trees along the center. But I would support that. Thank you.
I do have one thing on that RFP. I would like for us to be very specific. I know the mayor brought this to us when he first came aboard, and I'd like for the graphs of how the light's going to be done exactly, some little sketch of that, so we won't have any confusion. That is very clear. That we're going to do these trees, and that way it won't get messy, because it did get a little bit messy last year.
That is exactly our intent.
Thank you so
Councilmember
very
McCullough.
much. Keep the stress out of it.
I'm good with the lights. I think Councilman Herzog had a great idea with these vines, and it seems like he's got a very cost-effective solution for it, so support that completely. With respect to the child safety, the Be Brave, Be Safe, I'm supportive of that at this point. Looks like it won't go in this year based on what you're saying, but something that we can make sure is funded for when it does actually happen. I think it's a fairly minimal expense in the grand scheme of things when we consider the fact that we did make a commitment to the community when we were looking at removing the ordinance that we had back in December. We made it very clear that we were going to focus on this, and so I'm glad that we're sticking to that commitment there. And that the wayfinding signage seems like a no-brainer. If it's cost neutral, somebody else is going to pay for it, and it's going to actually help get some of these homes sold so that the development fees will come to us and we can pay for the sports park quicker. I'm all for that. So.
He's got my support on Be Safe, Be Brave. I think it is a commitment we made to the public, and I think that we as the City of Lake Forest, as all of us council members, I think that public safety and the safety of our children is of most importance to us. So I'm very pleased to see that the BIA's come in and is offering to pay for that, but we will be able to add our directionals to the sports park or to the skate park along with that. That's great. Thank you. I'm supporting that. So I think that you need clarification.
Mr. Mayor, as it relates to the child safety program, I guess I would make an assumption that the council is fine with option is cost neutral for us to more aggressively market our programs. What I'm hearing is that the second option, which is the Be Brave, Be Safe, is something you would like to sponsor, and clearly that may or may not happen this year based on how that goes through the district. If there's no feel relative to option 3 or 4, then we would not include those in the budget. If you want to do, then I think you just want to let us know that that's something you're interested in, option 3 or 4.
Okay. I think it's always option 1, which is increased marketing. I'm always for marketing our city and our programs, so that's a great take on that. But I think option 2 would be probably the option I would go with. It's not an either or, is it? I mean, we wouldn't want to start Get Safe program, which is costly, but then our option 3, the Lake Forest City, what's the cost? If we started that up, is something that we could.
The staff's evaluation is that option 3 would be a city-based program. Ms. Runyon would be involved in helping us create that project, but it would be done using personnel, and we would be able to do that this year, and the cost is about $3,500 is what we're anticipating it would be. So it would be well, yeah, if we, for example, we do one Citizens Academy a year. So if you did one Child Safety Academy, I'm not sure how many folks we feel that we could actually, and kids we could sign up, and the parents, but pretty robust program once a year. But if you did it more than once, it'd be $3,500 each time, but at least once, $3,500. You could do that this year if you wanted to do it in lieu of the fact that there may not be the Be Safe, Be Brave program. So it's not either or. It could be any and all of them.
So basically, the startup cost wouldn't be horrendous for us, and so I would support that. I'd hate to get something started in a program that we put a lot of money into in a startup and getting a program all the program all designed and ready to go, and have a big cost on top of what the $3,500 is, or it's just a one-time thing.
Well, we think it'd be, here, I guess the caveat to that, Mr. Mayor, if we did that program, started it this year, I think you'd want to anticipate that you'd be doing it every year, at least once. So the $3,500 is the cost to put it on each year. So if it's not a startup, but that's what we think the programmatic costs are.
Obviously, I think that we as a city can. I would support that, because the fact is that I think that it would be good for our children, and it's just another way of getting the word out there and teaching our children how to be safe. So, yes, I would support that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would support that for several reasons, but also we did give our word on that, and so we're taking and following through with our word. So we need to, that should be automatic. Once a year is fine at this time, and I don't feel that's a large price to pay. I feel that when we tell the public that we're going to do something, we have got to be men and women of our word, because we're speaking for every citizen in this city when we give our word. So we have to follow through. So that shouldn't even be an option of discussion. Just that should be a done deal.
So I think you got your consensus there.
With that, Mr. Mayor, our recommendation is that we now kind of turn to the departments themselves and entertain any questions or comments by the council. Traditionally, you start with the city council's budget, and then just work your way through each one successively. We have no presentations related to them, so we're just willing to answer any questions the council may have.
Yes.
I guess we're starting. I was on the city council budget, the last item there, voting system in council chambers. I don't remember where'd that come from and why.
It's staff, so that's the quick answer to that. Our suggestion, I guess, and it's clearly for you to act on, either say yes or no to, is a lighting system in which votes are recorded by members of the council, and they're all exposed at one time, and it's just easier by which to keep track of how that is occurring. Oftentimes there is some confusion as it relates to whether or not a certain vote went a certain way, who did, and consequently this makes it abundantly clear unless you do a roll call each and every time. So it's just a program. You see that in a variety of cities. If you have interest in it, we've included it. If you don't, then we certainly take it out.
Okay. All right. I certainly wouldn't get too excited about it, because obviously when we build the new city hall, obviously we're going to have all kinds of stuff in there, and
Yes, that would be the idea. Yeah.
it sounds like this would be a, shall we say, a loss leader.
Well, we would hope we'd be able to take the transfer of the system with us, but yeah, certainly one, much like the video recording, you could defer that until such time as you actually rebuild a civic center.
Just one comment on your lights. Do not buy the type they have at the fire authority. Even the staff gets confused on it, and it doesn't always work. So please look at something else, because that's a mess.
On that note, Mayor Pro Tem has to take a break. Could we have a little recess here?
Needs to say, you have to talk some more.
Okay, so,
Well, you didn't make it.
No, I know. We'd like to reconvene this meeting. Thank you. And where were we? City Clerk, you recall where we were?
You were on the, had just, I think, finished the city council budget. If you didn't have any
Okay.
other questions, then you'd be
For
moving
the-
manager.
the divisions, yes. Departments.
Yes.
Council?
So what, the next one's the city manager's department?
Yes, it
I
would.
think we just disbanded.
Do I have a vote for that? Or?
Just to see if anybody was awake.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no questions about the city manager budget, then your next one would be Economic Development and Community Preservation Department.
I did have one question here. It's on page 52. And this is still under the all divisions, although it's broken out in Housing Division 2, and that's the Saguaro relocation. We had undertaken under the redevelopment agency, using the 20% set aside, the development of affordable housing location, and we bought the Saguaro property. And then in the middle of that process, the state did away with RDAs, which meant we couldn't complete the process and enter into the contracts needed. One of those contracts which we were looking into and working on was a relocation. Now, obviously, that's gone. So, to me, there's no reason to keep that $224,000 there. If the state doesn't want us to do that kind of effort in the city, then that was their decision. And I don't see any reason to keep the money there, particularly it's not the 20% set aside any longer. That'd be general fund monies. We've stated pretty clearly we don't want to do that. And we'll look for other opportunities, as we have in other arenas, for working with transitional housing and other such housing needs. So my suggestion is we remove that Saguaro relocation monies from the budget.
Mayor, members of the council, this is, as you know, an ongoing effort, that being the dissolution process with the state of California. On this particular item, we had communicated previously with the Lake Forest Successor Agency Oversight Board and the Lake Forest Successor Agency that this was the most recent communication we had received from the state on our most recent ROPS, which is that they were disputing our relocation benefits. We disagreed with that because we believe, and the law states, that the relocation obligation for Saguaro was tripped before the dissolution process was begun and legislation adopted. So we believe this obligation is remaining, and that we should be able to preserve our former housing set-aside funds to cover those costs, which potentially will be incurred whether we advance the project or not. So that's a key point. We had a conversation just late last week with the state of California that went rather favorably in trying to prove our point that the relocation obligation is an ongoing obligation as a matter of law, whether we do the project or not, and that our former agency set-aside money should be preserved for that purpose. We do not, however, though, yet have the final letter from them, and we are waiting to receive that to confirm that they have, in fact, agreed with our position. So at this point, staff's recommendation would be, well, let's keep this until such time as we get that final resolution from the state of California and are able to sort out with a degree of finality how that's actually going to work. However, I should note, even though it's in the Housing Authority budget, this is the only category of former agency housing money that would be preserved for that purpose, and that purpose alone. It must be used only for Saguaro relocation.
Well, and see, that raises the broader question we've had about Saguaro, is that since they've done away with the RDA and the 20% set-aside, we've taken the position that we want to sell that property and not be involved in this process. If the state has decided that that is not a thing to do, then fine. And so I'm still puzzled because we're accumulating other expenses as were outlined, and at least so far the state has said they're not going to pay for them. And so, if they want to cut off, that kind of project, that's their doing. I'm not going to subject the general fund to it. So I'm still not clear as to why we would keep that in there and why we would pursue it. We want to sell the property. That's what we want to do.
Mayor, members of the council, if I may ask, Councilor Herzog, when you say pursue it, you mean the relocation component specifically, or the project, or both?
Both.
Okay, whether we...
Direction has been to sell the property.
Absolutely. And whether, point being, whether we sell the property or not, Mayor, members of the council, there is the possibility that the relocation obligation would still exist. And so that's the reason for preserving these funds. If we sold the property tomorrow to Families Forward or to some other organization or on the private market to the highest bidder, under the laws of the state of California, the relocation obligation would still exist.
Okay, well, that's something new we have not been told before, so I would like a legal opinion on that. I want to see this. I'm getting very tired of the Saguaro project. It's just bleeding us. The state has made the decision that we're not supposed to do this. That was their stupid decision. And I have no interest at all in continuing to use the general fund for that project. The state of California has made their stupid decision. I want them to live with it, and I want them to live with it big. It was the only thing open to the state of California for actually pursuing affordable housing, and they killed it. It was the only thing available for any kind of economic development, and they killed it. They apparently don't want the state of California to move forward, and I am not going to have the citizens of Lake Forest take up the burden for what the state is trying to do. We will take care of this town, and this town only. So I want to see the opinion, because we have not been told that somehow we're on the hook for relocation when the project's not going to go forward.
Yeah, Mr. Members of the Council, we have been conversing with attorney, but I think it would be appropriate to get the opinion that Member Herzog's talking about. We can provide that to you. We are actively negotiating to sell that property, and clearly we believe that it's an obligation not of the general fund but of the housing fund, and that's what we're trying to get out of the state of California. So we'll have all those elements back to you before you see this again.
Okay. Next item.
Whoops. The next department would be the city attorney.
I'm okay with everything. Move it.
If there's no questions, the department would be the finance department.
While they're shuffling pages, I have something for the finance department. 1+. That's all.
1+, okay.
He knows what that is.
He knows what that means.
1+.
I'll have him fill me in later.
Okay. He'll tell you 1+. I promised him I wouldn't give him a hard time tonight, but I just want to remind him 1+.
1+.
Duly noted.
All right. Any questions from council?
If not, then the next department, development services.
What page? 86. Oh, you got, I should have put tabs in there. I'm sorry. Should I just do it over there? I'm just tired.
If we feel
Nothing?
no question, maybe moving right
The
on.
next is public works.
Oh, I got a lot from him, but I'll let him slide.
Okay. Councilman Herzog.
One's just a comment we've actually talked about before. And when you mentioned it before, that there's going to be that project in El Toro Road, and hopefully when they do that project, they can take the bump out that Caltrans created on the northbound off-ramp.
Okay. Duly noted.
Smooth engineering by Caltrans there. Can't line up the road. But, no, the other one actually was the San Diego Region Water Quality Control Board unfortunately did approve the MS4 permit, the new region-wide permit. And while we made a lot of efforts to try to make it more rational, they didn't apparently accept any of your suggestions. So now, obviously, that does have an impact, at least on part of the city, because we're in two different water districts so far. But, I think the thing I would like to see, and I think the council would need to know now, is to sort of get an analysis of, okay, now what does this new permit do to us? And, what kind of things, because I know there were some rather, shall we say, novel concepts in there that might even be very sort of problematic and distressing to even our citizenry. And I think we need to start getting that out as far as what now another state single-purpose agency is making us do. And these single-purpose agencies are becoming quite a problem. Because, of course, again, they come up with the rules, don't fund anything, and that sort of thing. So, as far as the sort of, I guess it'd be what the new stuff is, and then what that might entail, and what it might cost us.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to know where are we standing as far as getting out of the San Diego Water District, what is it? Quality control. I know we've been working on it, but how close are we getting out and being in just one?
Mr. Members of the council, perhaps it would be good for us to provide you a memorandum as to that, as it would address Councilmember Herzog's questions, because our legal counsel would be working on that.
Yes.
I believe we had a favorable response. That's the good news. The bad news is that there would still be elements of the San Diego permit requirements that would attach to our community regardless of whether we're under San Ana or not. Is what we're sort of looking at, but we'll need to really go through that for you so you can understand what it means and what it doesn't mean when we get consolidated under one district. But I think we've had a favorable response, but we're not certain that it's as good as we'd like it to be in the long term.
It's been a long haul, and the legislators have to weigh in on this, right?
I think it's just the two boards.
The two boards?
The two boards, and maybe, does the state need to do that too? Just the two boards need to agree? That would be Santa Ana and San Diego. And it looks favorable, but there's implications to it that we need to probably understand better and brief you on.
Thank you.
Further?
No.
Moving right along.
The next department's management services.
What number is that?
132.
132.
Council, if not hearing any, moving right along.
Next department then would be community services.
162.
162. We have stuff on there. That's scary.
Yeah, his budget went way up.
We all have something individually for him. Let's just load him up.
He's spending too much money.
I just have one question. Obviously, there's the continuation with the rec program with Saddleback Valley Unified School District. Now, a couple years ago, and I don't remember how many, we kind of looked into possibly taking that over, and I don't know if we were sort of heading in that direction or not, but anyway, we were looking at it, and I didn't know if that sort of discussion is still open or ongoing, or sort of what the status is.
The conclusion ultimately was major reductions in the cost that the school district was going to charge the city after we got into those conversations. And so,
they cut their fees?
Yeah, they did. So you'll be entertaining a new contract with them again. And so right now it still appears to be the most favorable thing to do is with the district as it relates only to that. That's the only program we're doing is the elementary school after-school program.
And for the information of our new council members, wasn't when we started thinking about funding that through ourselves that the school district started talking about rental fee for the space used at the schools?
The school district likes to charge, and when I say that, I don't want to disparage them at all. Clearly, they have costs, and they very rarely will release those. They will charge everybody equally so, because they've got costs. And so, yeah, we got into conversations about what gets included in those costs. But eventually, we are able to work, I think, the dollar amount to make sense.
Great, thank you. Anything further, or moving right along?
Just real quick, while we're on that topic, I've had a few residents talk to me about participation in those programs who their children attend private schools, or they may even be homeschooled, and just some challenges there. So in dealing with the school district, coming onto school grounds after school programs and so forth. So just if staff could take a look at that and just find out what the policy is, and just so that I can have some clarifications.
Certainly. We'll look into that, and then we'll provide a memo to the council.
Thank you. Next.
The next would be police services.
Already asked it.
Any questions?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, moving right along.
The next, there's really no dollars involved, just programs that they're suggesting is fire services. So it's a pretty small budget at zero, so we don't really probably dwell too long.
Moving right along.
There is clearly then the two other budgets. There's vehicles involved. If you have questions about any of the remaining elements of the city's budget, we are recommending, and you'd see as scheduled maintenance, replacement of a few vehicles. But beyond that, Mr. Mayor, I think the city's operating budget would be complete, unless you have other questions related to that.
Councilman Herzog does have a question on that.
Okay.
Yeah, under vehicle replacement, I have a feeling this is new, but water quality truck? Is that a replacement, or is that a new?
No, that's actually, I believe, a new vehicle. Is that right? That's related to the position that's coming on to actually do the water quality inspections that we're doing. So, yeah, that is a new one, Mr. Herzog.
Okay, and again, and why are we doing this now?
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Wheeler, but fundamentally, it's been in our plan to add an inspector because of the cost savings involved in that issue. So it's in the budget as it relates to personnel. But I'll speak to the vast and sundry things that we're trying to do under water quality.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's to replace a consultant that we're using. So it'd be cheaper cost. It's been in the strategic plan for a few years. So with that would be the one-time cost for a new vehicle. But it'd be a city staff versus a full-time consultant and those cost savings.
Mr. Mayor, unless there's any other questions about the city's operating budget, then the next would be the Housing Authority at a very de minimis amount of money. It zeroes in and zeroes out. And at a certain point, clearly, I think we get the sense of the council's flavor on this issue, wherein once we've disposed of all the assets, maybe the Housing Authority itself may be an item that you'd consider whether it needs to continue or not. And if there's no questions about that budget, then the last is the two-year capital improvements budget. We did some conversations at the very beginning of this meeting, so unless there's any questions about that, we'd be glad to respond to those. Otherwise, there's nothing else that staff has this evening.
Yeah, I just had a couple, and it kind of raised one. We had, in one of them, they're doing some of the, we call it the MPS items, medians, parkway slopes, and then there's some grant funds coming from MWD, and you were talking about doing sort of a review of the plant palette, or there were going to be some changes there, and it might be good just as a general proposition, because the city did establish a plant palette that was used for the public areas, and I think particularly ones that should be reviewed is on our slopes, because obviously you don't get the same watering aspects. But since we're talking about this specifically, it seems like it might be a good time to review the plant palette.
Okay.
Because although it's mentioned in the budget about, there'd be a different plant palette, obviously it's like, okay, what? And we've always been, very focused on, what that palette looks like and how it works, and it's been very effective, and we've gotten good response as far as how the public facilities look as far as the plantings go. So it seems like it might be a good idea to do that again.
We bring that to the council and let you look at the document as it exists today, clearly, so you could review it.
And then, because they just use there's a terminology in here of, I forget how they phrased it, but you can see it in the last couple of items in this section. And okay, what does that mean?
Okay.
So.
All right. I see Mr. Wheeler taking good notes, so we'll bring that back.
I think there's a couple others. Oh, just curious on the Portola Parkway streetscape. While there's design numbers in here, there's nothing as far as construction. And I didn't know. I mean, obviously, this is in the same segment where we're doing the sports park and just did that intersection at Rancho. Is there any way to kind of coordinate those two so that whole area gets done at once, or
Mr. Wheeler, you want to respond to the question?
instead of get it done and then have to dig it up again?
We did pull some conduit when we were digging it up, so hopefully we won't have to dig it up again.
Okay.
We laid the conduit at that time. Yeah, but this would clean up that area, add to that Portola Parkway. Also, we want to widen the lane drop that goes under the 241.
Right.
And do that. So we do this in preparation for the Measure M call for projects would be the idea.
Okay.
And we're trying to prepare for T-grant, so maybe it's 2 projects, maybe it's 1 project that we could pull together. We're just not quite sure yet, but we want to get an okay, and then we'd start doing the conceptual things.
Oh, and then in page 19, the Bake Parkway Corridor traffic signals synchronization. Apparently it's going to start at the freeway. Where will that end?
It'll go the full length. This is one of the
Full length of Bake?
full length of Bake.
Okay. And I think that's it for my notes.
I believe we have all of the direction that staff needs, Mr. Mayor, so unless there's anything else, we'll defer to council.
We have Agenda Item 3, the draft fiscal year 2013-14 Business Development and Attraction Work Plan, submitted by the Assistant City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item we've traditionally brought to highlight it for you. I think the staff report speaks for itself in terms of the programs that we're looking at. We'd be glad to respond to any questions the council may have. If you have none, then this is something we just move forward with.
Yes, Jim Gardner? This is 3.
Oh, that's right, he said keep it to 2.
That's what he said.
But you said 3.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Jim Gardner. I'm here from Lake Forest. First of all, I want to commend the council and the staff on the pro-business. Ever since we chased the pickle into Laguna Hills, there's been a really big change, and that's terrific. The existing programs, it sounds like we're doing some good things. There's 100 new businesses, 2 big employers, but, and this goes back to my comments earlier, KPIs, key performance indicators. It would be interesting, in fact I would say essential, that you also have the information about how many businesses failed, about how many businesses moved, what's the vacancy rate, office and retail, what is it over time, what is it compared to other cities. In other words, for you to make intelligent decisions, there's a whole host of information you need available to you that the staff could do, but they're not doing it yet. So I would urge you, council members, to be more proactive in working the staff harder and getting more of this information to you. That's the existing program. impossible to say whether or not that's good without any kind of other data with which to compare that. Talking about the new programs, I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem that the GROW idea is a good idea, but it looks to me like it's a good idea in search of a plan. The report kind of says, well, we could do this, on the other hand, we could do that, and maybe we should do this. What's it lacking? It's lacking KPIs. What do you expect to get out of it? How will you measure it? How will you look at that? How will you define success? So yes, who would be against the GROW concept, but how are you going to measure that? The expedited thing, it sounds like you're doing that now, it sounds like you're doing a good job. I don't see how that's new. The workshop, thank you very much, Councilman Robinson, for following through on the workshop. That's a great idea. I think that will go a long way. What's the KPI? Well, the KPI should be how much more of the budget is being spent in the city of Lake Forest, which is something we could look at every month in the warrant register. And over time, if your workshops are successful, we'd see that going up. KPIs, KPIs. So what we're doing is good, but we really don't know how well it is, what it's impacting, whether or not it's cost-effective KPIs. So I'd like to see more of that throughout everything that we do as a city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No questions?
The staff is obviously able to respond to Councilman Ahab, otherwise it's up to you.
Council?
I just have one quick comment. Relationship with the chamber, I've started to get more educated on basically what that means, and appreciate that input that I've received from staff. I've had one comment from a few businesses, and I don't know whether it's accurate or not, so just if I could get some feedback when you have time, but I've heard some businesses that aren't a part of the chamber were having some trouble maybe getting, they might have felt like city participation in like trying to do their own ribbon cutting, and I don't know whether that would be accurate or not, you know, so I just want to make sure that I have some clarification, and it seemed a little strange to me. I didn't really, I feel like the city would show up for that in just about any other event, so, but if you could help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Dwight, Mayor,
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Kathy.
you know we had over 100 businesses open last year, and any business that asks our city, we do, Jessica, we be there. There are some businesses that did not ask the city, and in fact, some of them, I heard they had opened, and I went by and welcomed them and gave them city pins. But if they ask the city, they don't have to go through the chamber. They can just, when they pull their information, they know we have a chamber, but they also are told that they could get a representative from the city will be there. Even if the mayor or the mayor pro tem can't make, Jessica's going to be there. She's usually there first. So, you know, sometimes they just didn't know, and a lot of them, some of them, the ribbon cuttings that I did last year, I let them know that they could have ribbon cuttings. Well, I see a new business, I asked them, do you know that you could have a ribbon cutting? Are you planning on having a ribbon cutting? So that's part of our job also.
If nothing further, any council comments? Okay. And that, we close this meeting. Everyone drive safe, and thank you.